Imagine being a mother who sacrifices everything for your child. You work double shifts to put food on the table, you give up your dreams so she can chase hers, and you love her with every fiber of your being. Now imagine that same child looking you in the eye and plotting your murder. That's exactly what happened to Lisa Thompson on a quiet summer night in 2009. Her own daughter, the girl she raised with unconditional love, let a man into their home to kill her while she slept. The worst part? Lisa saw it coming. She tried to stop it. She went to the police. She begged for help. But she was too late. By the time the sun rose, Lisa was gone, and her daughter was on the run with the boyfriend she killed for. This is the story of a love so twisted, so obsessive, that it cost a devoted mother her life. And before we begin, I need to ask you something. If you were Lisa, and you discovered your 14-year-old daughter was involved with a 19-year-old man, would you have done what she did? Would you have reported him? And knowing what happened to her, would you still make that same choice? Stay with me until the end, because what this teenage girl did after the murder will shock you even more than the crime itself. Before we go any deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Lisa Thompson was the kind of mother every child dreams of having. At 47 years old, she worked as an engineer for the county, pouring her heart into her career so she could provide the best life possible for her only daughter, Emma. Lisa was a single mother, but she never let that define her or limit her daughter's opportunities. Neighbors described Lisa as warm, generous, and fiercely protective of Emma. She attended every school event, volunteered at the community center, and made sure Emma never felt the absence of a father in her life. Their home in the quiet suburban community of Cedar Hills was modest but filled with love. Lisa had sacrificed her own social life to focus on raising Emma, and by all accounts, Emma was turning out to be a bright, promising young woman. She was 14 years old, in 9th grade, and according to her teachers, she was intelligent and creative. But there was something brewing beneath the surface, something Lisa didn't see until it was almost too late. Emma had started spending time at a local coffee shop after school, a place where teenagers gathered to hang out and study. It was there that she met Marcus Davis, a 19-year-old college student with a troubled past and a magnetic personality. Marcus was the kind of young man mothers warn their daughters about. He had dropped out of community college, worked odd jobs, and had a reputation for dating younger girls. But to Emma, Marcus was everything. He was older, experienced, and he made her feel special in ways she had never experienced before. What started as casual conversation over coffee quickly turned into something more intense. Marcus had a way of making Emma feel like she was the most important person in the world. He told her things no one else understood her the way he did, that age was just a number, and that their connection was deeper than anything society could comprehend. Emma, who was navigating the turbulent waters of adolescence, fell hard and fast. Within weeks of meeting, Emma and Marcus were inseparable. She started lying to her mother about where she was going, sneaking out late at night to meet him, and her grades began to slip. Lisa noticed the changes immediately. Her daughter, who had once been open and communicative, became secretive and defensive. When Lisa tried to ask about her new friend, Emma would shut down completely, locking herself in her room for hours. Lisa's maternal instincts told her something was very wrong, but she had no idea just how wrong things had become. Then came the day that changed everything. Lisa came home early from work one afternoon and walked into a nightmare. She found Emma and Marcus together in Marcus's bedroom. Marcus had convinced Lisa to let him rent a spare room in their home just weeks earlier, claiming he was a platonic friend of Emma's, and even suggesting he was gay to throw Lisa off the scent. It was all a lie. When Lisa opened that bedroom door, she saw her 14-year-old daughter half naked with a 19-year-old man, and in that moment, her world shattered. The confrontation that followed was explosive. Lisa demanded Marcus leave her home immediately, and he did, packing his things and walking out the door within hours. But Lisa knew this wasn't over. She sat Emma down and tried to explain the danger she was in, the fact that Marcus was an adult and Emma was a child, that what they were doing was not only inappropriate but illegal. Emma didn't want to hear it. In her mind, Lisa was the villain trying to tear apart true love. She screamed at her mother, telling her she didn't understand, that Marcus was the only person who truly cared about her, and that Lisa was ruining her life. For Lisa, this was one of the hardest moments of her life. She had always tried to be understanding, to give Emma space to make her own mistakes. But this was different. This was a predatory situation, and Lisa knew she had to act. She couldn't just sit back and hope Emma would come to her senses. So Lisa did what any protective mother would do. She went to the police. At the sheriff's department, Lisa filed a complaint against Marcus, accusing him of statutory rape. She handed over Emma's diary, which she had found hidden in her daughter's room. The diary was filled with explicit details of their sexual relationship, descriptions of drug use, and fantasies about running away together. It was all the evidence the police needed to build a case against Marcus. A detective called Marcus and questioned him over the phone. Marcus denied everything at first, claiming Emma was like a sister to him, and that he had never touched her inappropriately. But the detective pressed him, telling him it would be better to come clean now. Marcus grew defensive and scared, telling the detective he understood Emma was 14 and that he was terrified of what might happen next. He should have been terrified because at that moment, his world was about to come crashing down. But Lisa didn't realize that by going to the police, she had signed her own death warrant. Emma was devastated when she found out her mother had reported Marcus. She felt betrayed, humiliated, and enraged. In her mind, Lisa had crossed an unforgivable line. Emma called Marcus immediately, and the two began plotting their next move. They couldn't let Lisa destroy their relationship. They couldn't let Marcus go to prison. And so, in the twisted logic of two young people consumed by obsession, they decided there was only one solution. Lisa had to die. For the next several weeks, Emma and Marcus planned the murder in secret. They talked about it constantly, romanticizing the idea that they were star-crossed lovers like Romeo and Juliet, willing to do anything to be together. Marcus even wrote in his journal about how killing someone for love was the ultimate test of devotion. Emma told her friends she wished her mother would die, but no one took her seriously. They thought she was just a dramatic teenager venting about her overbearing parent. No one could have imagined she actually meant it. The plan was simple but chilling. Emma would drug her mother's drink with sleeping medication to make sure she was unconscious and unable to fight back. Then, late at night, Emma would let Marcus into the house through a side door. Together, they would go into Lisa's bedroom and kill her. At first, they talked about both of them stabbing Lisa, a shared act that would bind them together forever. But as the night approached, Emma began to have second thoughts. Could she really go through with killing her own mother? Could she actually plunge a knife into the woman who had raised her, loved her, and sacrificed everything for her? The night of June 11th, 2009, Emma put the plan into motion. She waited until Lisa came home from work, exhausted as always, and offered to make her a drink. Lisa, unsuspecting and probably grateful for the gesture, accepted. Emma poured her mother's favorite beverage and mixed in a heavy dose of sleeping pills, crushing them into powder so they would dissolve completely. Lisa drank it, never knowing it would be one of the last things she ever consumed. Within an hour, Lisa was in bed, drowsy, and falling into a deep, drug-induced sleep. Emma waited, her heart pounding, her mind racing. She texted Marcus, telling him it was time. He arrived at the house just after midnight, parking his car down the street so no one would see. Emma let him in through the side door, and the two stood in the hallway armed with kitchen knives they had taken from the drawer. This was the moment of truth. For a brief second, Emma hesitated. She looked down the hallway toward her mother's bedroom, and something inside her broke. She couldn't do it. She couldn't walk into that room and kill her own mother. So she told Marcus to go ahead without her. She stood outside the bedroom door, closed her eyes, covered her ears with her hands, and hummed to herself, trying to block out the sounds of what was happening inside. Marcus entered Lisa's bedroom alone. She was lying in bed, unconscious from the medication, completely defenseless. He stood over her for a moment, knife in hand, and then he did what they had planned. He stabbed her. Again, and again, and again, 20 times in total. The wounds were concentrated on her face, neck, and arms. One slash across her throat was so deep it nearly decapitated her. Lisa never had a chance to scream, to fight back, or to call for help. She died in her own bed, in the home she had worked so hard to provide, killed by the man her daughter loved. When Marcus came out of the bedroom, Emma opened her eyes and saw him covered in blood. There was a tear running down his cheek, and he looked stunned, as if he couldn't believe what he had just done. But Emma didn't run. She didn't call the police. She didn't try to save her mother. Instead, she walked up to Marcus, hugged him, and told him everything was going to be okay. Together, they covered Lisa's body with a blanket, one with a cartoon character on it, as if trying to hide the horror of what they had done. Then they turned down the air conditioning in the house as low as it would go, hoping to slow the decomposition of the body and buy themselves more time. They wiped down surfaces, gathered their things, and walked out of the house hand in hand, leaving Lisa's body behind. Their next stop was the home of a mutual friend, a young man named Daniel. Emma and Marcus showed up at his door in the middle of the night, and Marcus told him what they had just done. He even showed Daniel the blood-stained knife, still in a white shopping bag, bragging about how he had stabbed Lisa in the throat and stomach. Daniel was horrified, but he didn't call the police. He didn't know what to do, and by the time he made sense of what he had been told, Emma and Marcus were already gone, heading toward San Francisco to execute the next part of their plan. They had decided that after killing Lisa, they would commit suicide together. It was their twisted version of a Romeo and Juliet ending, a romantic tragedy that would immortalize their love. They checked into a cheap hotel room and bought supplies for their suicide pact. They mixed together a bizarre concoction of Fruit Loops, cake, Drano, vodka, and Pepto-Bismol, believing this toxic combination would kill them. They ate it together, lying in bed, holding hands, ready to die. But they didn't die. The mixture made them sick, violently ill, but it wasn't lethal. They vomited for hours and eventually passed out, waking up the next morning still alive. Their plan had failed. Meanwhile, back in Cedar Hills, Lisa's absence was starting to raise alarms. She didn't show up for work on Friday, which was unusual because Lisa was never late and never missed a day without calling. Her supervisor tried to reach her by phone, but there was no answer. He called again on Monday when she still hadn't shown up, and when he got no response, he decided to contact her parents. Lisa's parents, Robert and Susan, were immediately concerned. They drove to her house and found law enforcement already there, having been called to do a welfare check. Robert unlocked the door with his spare key, and deputies entered the home. What they found inside was a scene of unspeakable horror. Lisa was in her bedroom, lying in bed, covered with a blanket. When they pulled it back, they saw her body, brutally stabbed, her face and neck covered in wounds. The air conditioning had been turned down so low that the room was freezing, an obvious attempt to preserve the body. The medical examiner later determined that Lisa had been dead for at least 3 days. The house showed no signs of forced entry, which told investigators that Lisa knew her killer. Suspicion immediately fell on Emma and Marcus, who were nowhere to be found. Detectives began piecing together the timeline, talking to friends, reviewing phone records, and tracking the couple's movements. They discovered that Emma and Marcus had been seen together in the days following the murder, acting as if nothing had happened. According to witnesses, they were holding hands, kissing, and laughing as they walked down the street, completely carefree. They had gone to visit friends, hung out at public places, and showed no remorse whatsoever. It was as if they had already moved on from the murder, as if Lisa's death meant nothing to them. On June 16th, 5 days after Lisa's murder, police finally caught up with Emma and Marcus. They were found at a shopping mall in San Bruno, California, about 100 miles away from Cedar Hills. Officers spotted them behind a dumpster, changing their clothes, trying to stay hidden. When police approached, Emma and Marcus were arrested on the spot. Emma immediately began screaming, insisting her mother wasn't dead, that it couldn't be true. She demanded a lawyer and refused to speak to investigators. Marcus, on the other hand, seemed detached and confused, claiming he didn't remember how he ended up at the crime scene. When detectives searched their hotel room, they found the remnants of their failed suicide attempt, the Fruit Loops cake, rat poison, and vodka still scattered around the room. They also found condoms, marijuana, a suicide note, and a DVD copy of the movie Donnie Darko, a film about a troubled teenager who sees visions and struggles with violence. It was clear that Emma and Marcus had been living in their own twisted fantasy world, one where murdering Lisa and dying together was somehow romantic and justified. Both Emma and Marcus were charged with first-degree murder, but as the case moved forward, the two began turning on each other. Emma claimed Marcus had forced her to participate, that she had been manipulated and controlled by him, and that she never actually wanted her mother dead. Marcus, on the other hand, claimed Emma was the mastermind, that she had begged him to kill Lisa, and that he had only done it because he loved her and wanted to protect her. The truth, as it often does, lay somewhere in the middle. Both of them had played a role in Lisa's death, and both of them would have to face the consequences. Emma's defense team knew she was facing a potential life sentence without parole if convicted of first-degree murder, so they worked out a plea deal with prosecutors. In exchange for pleading guilty to second-degree murder and agreeing to testify against Marcus, Emma's sentence would be reduced to 15 years to life, making her eligible for parole when she turned 29. Emma accepted the deal, and in 2010, she stood before a judge and admitted her role in her mother's death. At her sentencing, Emma tried to explain what had happened, telling the court she had been in a full-blown panic attack when her mother found her diary, that she felt trapped and terrified, and that she believed Marcus would go to prison and she would never see him again. She claimed she loved Marcus more than anything, that she trusted him completely, and that if he had told her to jump off a bridge, she would have done it. But the judge wasn't swayed by her excuses. Emma had helped plan her mother's murder, had drugged her, had let Marcus into the house, and had done nothing to stop the killing. She was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison, and the courtroom fell silent as the reality of her punishment set in. Emma was led away in handcuffs, and her grandparents, Robert and Susan, sat in the courtroom weeping for the daughter they had lost and the granddaughter who had destroyed their family. Marcus's trial began in May of 2011, and Emma was the prosecution's star witness. She took the stand and told the jury everything, describing how they had planned the murder together, how she had drugged her mother, and how Marcus had gone into the bedroom and stabbed Lisa while Emma stood outside humming to block out the sounds. Emma admitted she couldn't bring herself to watch, but she knew what was happening. She testified that after Marcus came out of the room, covered in blood, she hugged him and told him everything would be okay. She described how they left the house together, visited friends, and tried to kill themselves in a hotel room. Her testimony was damning, and it painted Marcus as the primary killer. But Marcus's defense team fought back, arguing that Emma was lying to save herself, that she had actually been the one to kill Lisa, and that Marcus had only tried to cover for her because he loved her. They pointed to inconsistencies in Emma's story and questioned her credibility, reminding the jury that she had lied to police, to her mother, and to everyone around her for months. But the jury didn't buy it. After deliberating for less than 24 hours, they found Marcus guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, meaning he would never walk free again. As the sentence was read, Marcus showed little emotion, staring straight ahead as if he had already accepted his fate. His mother, sitting in the courtroom, broke down in tears, insisting her son was innocent and that he had been manipulated by Emma. But the evidence told a different story. Marcus's DNA had been found under Lisa's fingernails, proving he had been in physical contact with her during the attack. His journal entries about killing for love, his lies to police, and his own actions after the murder all pointed to his guilt. He had killed Lisa, and now he would spend the rest of his life in prison for it. But the story doesn't end there. Years later, while serving her sentence, Emma participated in several interviews, and what she said shocked even those who had followed the case closely. When asked if she felt remorse for what she had done, Emma's response was chilling. She said she just wanted to be happy, and she couldn't understand why people didn't see that. She talked about her mother as if Lisa had been the villain, as if reporting Marcus to the police had been an unforgivable betrayal. Emma showed little genuine remorse for the fact that her mother was dead, focusing instead on how the murder had affected her own life. She complained about being in prison, about missing out on her teenage years, and about the fact that she and Marcus could never be together. It was as if she still didn't fully grasp the magnitude of what she had done. Meanwhile, Marcus also participated in interviews from prison, and his story began to change. Years after the trial, he admitted that Emma had been the one who pushed for the murder, that she had begged him to kill Lisa, and that he had only gone through with it because he thought Emma loved him. He said he realized too late that Emma hadn't loved him at all. She had used him, manipulated him, and then thrown him under the bus to save herself. Whether or not Marcus's version of events was entirely true remains a matter of debate. But one thing was clear. Both Emma and Marcus were guilty. Both had played a role in Lisa's death, and both would spend decades, if not the rest of their lives, paying for what they had done. In 2022, after serving over a decade in prison, Emma was granted parole. She was released in 2023, walking out of prison a free woman at the age of 28. The decision to grant her parole was controversial, with many people arguing that she should have remained behind bars for the rest of her life. Lisa's parents, Robert and Susan, were devastated by the news. They had lost their daughter in the most horrific way imaginable, and now the person responsible for her death was free to live her life. They spoke out against the parole decision, saying that no amount of time in prison could ever make up for what Emma had done. They said Lisa had been a devoted mother who had only wanted to protect her daughter, and that her reward for that love had been betrayal and death. As for Marcus, he remains in prison to this day, serving his life sentence without the possibility of parole. He will never be released, never experience freedom again, and will spend the rest of his life thinking about the choices he made on that June night in 2009. So where does that leave us? What are we supposed to take away from this story? How does a 14-year-old girl go from being a bright, promising student to plotting the murder of her own mother? Was Emma born evil? Or was she a victim of manipulation, a teenager who fell under the control of an older, predatory man? And what about Marcus? Was he a cold-blooded killer? Or was he a young man who made a terrible decision because he thought he was in love? These are questions without easy answers. What we do know is that Lisa Thompson was a good mother who did everything she could to protect her daughter. She went to the police, she tried to intervene, and she paid for it with her life. Lisa's death is a reminder of the dangers that can lurk in teenage relationships, the way obsession can masquerade as love, and the devastating consequences that can follow when boundaries are ignored. Think about this for a moment. If you were in Lisa's position, if you discovered your teenage daughter was involved with an adult man, what would you do? Would you report him to the authorities, knowing it might drive your child away? Would you try to handle it privately, hoping your daughter would eventually see the truth? Or would you do nothing, afraid of making things worse? These are impossible choices, and Lisa made the one she thought was right. She chose to protect her daughter, even if it meant her daughter would hate her for it. And in the end, that choice cost her everything. How do you feel about Emma? Do you see her as a victim, a young girl who was groomed and manipulated by an older man? Or do you see her as a calculated killer who knew exactly what she was doing? And what about Marcus? Was he a predator who took advantage of a vulnerable teenager? Or was he a fool who threw his life away for someone who never truly loved him? I want you to think about these questions because there are no simple answers. This case forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about love, obsession, manipulation, and violence. It reminds us that evil doesn't always look the way we expect it to, that sometimes it wears the face of a teenage girl or a young man who claims to be in love. And it shows us that the people we trust the most can sometimes be the ones who hurt us the deepest. If this story has affected you, if it's made you angry, sad, or just deeply unsettled, then I've done my job. This is the reality of true crime. These aren't just stories. These are real people, real lives, and real families destroyed by violence. Lisa Thompson was a real woman who loved her daughter and died trying to protect her. Emma and Marcus are real people who made real choices and are now living with the consequences. So I want to hear from you. What do you think drove Emma to kill? Was it love? Or was it something darker? Do you think she deserves the freedom she has now? Or should she have stayed in prison for the rest of her life? And how would you feel if you were one of Lisa's family members, watching your daughter's killer walk free after just over a decade behind bars? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I want to know what you think. If you believe justice was served in this case, hit the like button. If you think Emma got off too easy, let me know. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about human nature, then make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because this story, as dark as it is just one of many. There are more cases out there, more victims, more families torn apart by violence, and more questions that need to be asked. Next time, we're going to talk about the man who faked his own wife's death for insurance money. And when you hear what he did to cover his tracks, you won't believe it. That story is coming soon, so stay tuned. Until then, remember this. Sometimes the scariest monsters aren't hiding in the dark. Sometimes they're sitting right across the dinner table from you, smiling, telling you they love you, and planning something you could never imagine. Stay safe out there and never forget that the people we trust the most can sometimes be the most dangerous of all.